Hi. Now, we're going to move on to Module 5. Module 4 was really about theories and thinking about how you might apply the theories to your practice, right? Your teaching. And so now for Module 5, you really get to apply. So you'll get some practice yourself, first with a group or with your partner, then by yourself. And I give you a process, step 1, 2, 3, 4, kind of a way for you to apply the theory. The focus theory that we're going to use is Yang's bilingual theory. But you'll still be thinking about Bruner and the 3 levels, and about the knowledge theory and how you deepen understanding of vocabulary. So, So, let me first, I want to show you that on the announcements page, I have put, I've answered questions that you asked from Module 4. So take a look at that on D2L. Then we'll go to the content page, and we're on Module 5. We'll go down to here. Okay, so for Module 5 Explore, I give you an example of a way to plan for instruction using, the focus is on Yang's second language learning, the bilingual theory. You'll use the other theories, certainly Bruner and the 3 levels, and you'll use the knowledge theory to think about, how do I deepen a student's understanding of a vocabulary word. But the process is really from the bilingual theory. So here, these are my notes, and the process looks right here. There's planning, and then teaching, and then really assessment is the third part. But these are the steps to planning. The first part is really about, in my example, is a book, a story that is Little Nino's Pizza. And so if you're using a story, which is pretty typical for reading instruction, the first step is for you to identify those big concepts that you want students to understand. So not individual words, but the big ideas that really, if they understand the ideas, then they understand the story. They have comprehension, right? Oh, I lost my... Okay, so now we talked about where I'm planning. The second step is you need to select the individual words that you want to teach. But you can't teach all of the words. There's so many, really, that often a student doesn't know. And so you pick words that are really important to understanding the reading or the text, and maybe the words that you pick, you can sort of tuck under or add other words, but you have what are key words that you select for teaching. And then the third step is you don't really want to teach words that they already know. So you want to be sure that you test or you find out some way, you know, which words do they need to be taught actually. So don't teach words that they already know. Then for teaching, I've kind of broken it down, and this again is kind of based on Yang's theory, where they have the 3 stages of learning vocabulary. The first stage is word associations, and so your activities will be for helping students really make that initial association between the word, maybe its print, and the sign, and maybe finger spelling. But that's sort of that quick, that fast mapping that you read about before. The second stage, remember, is deepening, really understanding meaning. So the semantic and, you know, sort of where does that word fit in a sentence? And so what part of speech maybe is it? And what kind of sentences can you write or read or understand that use the word? Then the third stage is really teaching students about the structure of the word, and so the meaning parts and then some of the visual parts that they recognize. It's where you talk about root words and prefixes and suffixes. And then the third in this cycle is where you practice in reading and in writing and in conversation the use of the words. So it's that third part where you've done explicit teaching in the teaching part, and then you want to practice using the word in meaningful contexts. So as we kind of move down for my notes, I do give you an example of using this process for planning instruction. And you can see, again, this is with the book, Little Nino's Pizza. And step 1, the big concepts, identifying those, selecting and prioritizing the vocabulary you'll teach, looking at then the 3 stages in planning activities for teaching vocabulary. And that is the example. Then, for summarize, it's your opportunity to do the same thing. For summarize, the situation is that you have a student who read the text and doesn't understand it. And you know that part of the reason is that they don't understand a lot of the vocabulary. Many of the words they don't understand. So you have to plan using Yang's model, or the model I presented in the example, to plan. And you do this with your group or your partners. So you want to meet. I think you probably need to prepare, so read the text. It is the Harlem Renaissance, it's about that. And it's about a third grade reading. And you follow the process, just sort of the same as I showed you in the example. So you have 3 concepts. You think about each of the stages. What activities would you do? What would be appropriate for teaching the vocabulary from that text? And I have a worksheet for you to use. Right there. All right, open it up. So again, with your group or your individual partner, you kind of just follow the process. Each of the steps. And then that is for summarize, and apply then to apply. You do it yourself for your student. So again, using the same worksheet. So I think it'll be interesting. It's kind of fun to think about, many activities. It's not a lesson plan. So it's just ideas for teaching that you are brainstorming with your group or your partner. And then for a student that you are teaching. So again, brainstorming, thinking about the many activities for each of those stages. So, okay, I hope you have fun with this. Let me know if you have questions.